7 o'clock, are you ready?
No.
My phone says 7. We'll get to it. All right, if we could begin, please. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Adjustment meeting of September 26, 2018. Could we have a roll call, please, Ms. Yothers?
Mr. Rabowski?
Here.
Chairman Elliott?
Here.
Mr. Burris?
Here.
Mr. Eisner?
Here.
Ms. Turner?
Present.
Okay, call John.
Mr. Glenser?
Here.
Can't leave out John. Okay, let's be sure to silence all of our gadgets, please. We have some very serious matters on the agenda, and we don't want to be interrupted by phone calls from anybody, so thank you very much. We have 6 items on the agenda, and it's our normal procedure to take our time and go through the process of each item in sequence on our agenda. However, we do have the power to deviate from the agenda for emergencies. So if anybody has an emergency, like sick children at home, or you got to catch a plane or something, if you would please pass a note to Ms. Kim on this side or Luis on the other side, and we'll get it to me, and then we'll decide what to do. But does anybody right now have any urgent matters that we have to think about changing the agenda? Anybody from the board? All right, so it looks like we're going to go ahead item by item, and let's start with our legal counsel. Welcome back.
Thank you. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding where the Board of Adjustment acts in a quasi-judicial rather than a legislative capacity. At a quasi-judicial hearing, it is not the board's function to make law, but rather to apply law that has already been established. In a quasi-judicial hearing, the board is required by law to make findings of fact based upon the evidence presented at the hearing and apply those findings of fact to previously established criteria contained in the Code of Ordinances in order to make a legal decision regarding the application before it. The board may only consider evidence at this hearing that the law considers competent, substantial, and relevant to the issues. If the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has met the criteria established in the Code of Ordinance, then the board is required by law to find in favor of the applicant. By the same token, if the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has failed to meet the criteria established in the Code of Ordinance, then the board is required by law to find against the applicant. Are there any members of the board wishing to disclose any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest this evening?
I will when we get to number 4. I'm sorry, number 4. I'd like to address it at that time.
Okay. And anyone wishing to speak this evening in the presentation of evidence, if you could please stand and raise your hand to be sworn in.
If you're going to speak today, if you plan on speaking, let's do it now and get it done. Accept the oath, please.
Or anyone wishing to speak, if you could stand and raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
So sworn.
Okay, thank you. All right. When it's time for you to approach the podium, if you please could identify yourself and give us your address, please. All right, let's start with item number 3. It's an application for an extension, and the application number is 16-102. And let's hear from staff first, please.
Good evening, Luis Cerna presenting staff comments. This request is for a one-time 6-month extension to a 3-part variance. This variance was originally approved in December of 2016. Section 215.02K of the code does allow this board to grant one 6-month extension, provided proper notification by mail has been given, which it has. Staff is recommending approval of this 6-month extension.
Thank you. For the record, this property is some vacant land just near City Hall, just to the north of us. Does anybody wish to be heard on this item? Any board members? Anybody in the audience? Are we ready for a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
You got that, Kim? All right, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Turner?
Yes, approve.
Mr. Eisner?
Yes.
Mr. Burris?
Yes.
Mr. Urbansky?
Yes.
Mr. Elliott?
Yes. Okay, thank you. All right, the next item is application 18-86. It's a two-part variance to reduce a side yard and a shoreline buffer on Seabreeze Drive. And I'd like to declare a conflict of interest. I think, kind of a long story. First of all, my first wife was her babysitter about 50 or 60 years ago. I don't know if that qualifies.
That does not qualify as a
That doesn't
conflict.
qualify as a conflict. Her brother was my best man at my last wedding. I don't know if that qualifies. He was also the worst man because he was the only man at the wedding, but he was there anyway. But I also have done some legal work for her, so I will step aside.
Well, let
and
me ask you this, Chairman Elliott. Would the outcome of that application benefit you, pecuniary or otherwise, in one way or the other?
no.
Okay, then you do not have a conflict of interest under the law.
Okay, well then I'll be voting, I guess. All right, let's hear from staff, please.
Yes, this request is for a two-part variance. As you indicated, it is located at 1668 Seabreeze Drive. The property is zoned residential, single-family residential district R100. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the west side setback from 10 feet to 8.3 feet. The east side setbacks from 10 feet to 8 feet, and a variance to reduce the shoreline buffer from 30 feet to 19 feet to construct an addition that would match the side and rear yards of the existing residential dwelling. Also, the requested side yard setback variance of 16.3 feet does not match the total side yard setback requirement of 25 feet, so this reduction will need to be approved as well. This residence was constructed in 1971 and met the setback and buffer requirements at that time of development. The owner is currently seeking to build an addition that is in line with the current exterior walls of the existing structure. However, the city now has more stringent side yard setback and shoreline buffer requirements. In addition to the existing structure being a non-conforming use based on total minimum side yard setbacks, the subject site is also a non-conforming lot of record, as it does not meet the minimum lot width requirement of 75 feet. It is currently 72 feet wide. The applicant has indicated that the setback variances are being sought in order to build an addition at the rear of the existing dwelling, complying with the current minimum side yard setbacks and shoreline buffer, or complying with the current minimum side yard setbacks and shoreline buffer would force the property owner to build an addition that would not line up with the existing structure. Staff has reviewed this application for compliance with the criteria for variances of section 215.02B, and finding, based on what we indicated, that it does not meet the minimum lot width, and that the lot was created legally in prior to the home being constructed in 1971. We do find that it does meet the criteria for granting a variance. Our recommendation is for approval, subject to the standard condition that the variance granted shall expire 2 years from the date of approval by the Board of Adjustment.
Thank you, sir. For the benefit of the public, we have very broad cross-examination rights, so you're welcome when your item comes up to cross-examine anybody who testifies or anybody from the staff. We have a very open procedure, and you will be heard during our public hearing process. In case I forget, I will be reminded to ask for any public comment. So let's start off with any questions from the board on this item. To my right? To my left? Will the applicant wish to make a statement? She declines. Okay, anybody from the public wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, are we ready for a motion?
I move to approve. Second.
Any discussion? There were no objections, is that right, Luis, from the neighbors?
That's correct.
All right, let's have a roll call vote, please, Kim.
Ms. Turner?
Approve.
Mr. Eisner?
Approve.
Mr. Burris?
Approve.
Mr. Obowski?
Yes.
Mr. Elliott?
Yes. Okay, you've got 2 years to get your permit. The next item is at 1812 Gulf Beach Boulevard, that's near Sunset Beach, application 1888, to increase the allowable area of an accessory structure. Can we hear from the staff, please?
Yes, this property, the applicant is requesting a variance to the 200 square foot maximum size limitation for accessory structures in residential districts. The request is to add 120 square foot of bathroom to an existing 232 square foot bathhouse in the rear yard of the property. The residence was constructed in 1982 and the accessory structure in 2003. The applicant has indicated there's a septic tank in the area between the principal dwelling and the existing accessory building that's in part leading to the hardship request. The applicant is currently seeking to build a bathroom addition to the side of the existing accessory structure, whereby the total area of the bathroom would be approximately, or the total area of the bathhouse, the accessory structure, would be 352 square feet. The owner has indicated that due to the physical configuration of the property and improvements to the existing outbuilding, the proposed addition is the only option given the size of the building and the location of the existing septic tank. Staff has recommended denial of this based on the criteria for granting variances, and I'll just briefly touch on the highlights. The first criteria is that the need for the requested variance arises out of the physical surroundings, shape, topographic conditions, or other physical or environmental conditions that are unique to the specific property involved and which do not apply generally to property located in the same zoning district. Our finding is that the applicant has indicated that adding the bathroom to the existing outbuilding is the only option available to them due to the physical configuration of the property and improvements, as well as size of the building and location of the septic tank on the site. Since the lot does not meet the 75-foot minimum lot width requirement, it would be considered non-conforming. However, the lot depth exceeds the minimum requirements. The house and the existing accessory structure meet the setback requirements, and the proposed addition would not encroach into the rear yard setback. The existing accessory structure exceeds the 200 square foot maximum size limitation and would be considered a non-conforming structure. It seems that the applicant may have other options instead of increasing the size of the non-conforming accessory structure, such as installing the bathroom within the existing bathhouse, or building an addition to the principal structure. Staff does not find that the site conditions would constitute a hardship to the owner. So basically, we could not find that there's any particular peculiarity about this property that would warrant a hardship or anything unique to the property that would support increasing the variance beyond the maximum 200, increasing the accessory structure above the maximum 200 square feet. So staff is recommending denial of this application.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? On my right? On my left? Anybody? Nothing yet? Is the applicant in the audience? Would you care to make a statement, ma'am? Please, yes, and use the mic so everybody can hear you. I may have to move it around a little bit.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Lemons. I'm the owner of 1812 Gulf Beach Boulevard, along with my husband. We have a handicapped son, adult son, who had a stroke a few years ago and came to live with us. He is completely wheelchair bound. The reason for wanting to finish out this small outbuilding behind our structure is not an outbuilding that we put there. We've only owned the property for 2 years. But we had to have it when we purchased the property in order to get our 4-point inspection. Because the structure has electrical in it, we had to have the wires either sheathed or we had to enclose them. So that's what we did. We enclosed them with sheetrock and put insulation in. So the structure itself is about a 15 by 13. And we would like for it to be a place that our son can go and have some time to spend. Despite his physical limitations, his mind is good, and so he likes to spend time doing brain games, reading, and that sort of thing. So it would just give him some space. The difficulty with him getting from where that house is, that structure is, into the house when he needs to go to the bathroom is part of the reason we're asking just to be able to add a bathroom to that structure. So if he happens to be out there when it's raining, because there's nothing between us, the house, and that structure except a bird cage, that he would be able to use the bathroom without having to get all anxious about trying to get back in the house, particularly if it's stormed, or just being the primary caregiver of someone who's completely wheelchair bound. I can tell you that most handicap bathrooms are not really handicap accessible for every handicap. He's unable to walk. He's unable to, he needs assistance unless he has a bathroom that's configured that will provide for him. We have done this in our home in Virginia, and we would like to be able to provide him that space here. So we realize what we're asking for is for something that's non-conforming, but I just wanted to give that backdrop as the circumstances. That's why. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Don't go away. There'll be some questions, I'm sure. Okay, questions from the board?
Hi, I feel for your situation. Why would it not be possible to build this bathroom within the confines of the 13 by 15?
Well, it is. But when you take a power chair and the ability to be able to move the power chair around so he could hopefully be able to transfer out of the power chair into a chair, a more comfortable chair, then you've taken up quite a bit of the interior space in that building. It would take probably up to 6 square feet of it. 6 feet by 6 feet of it.
Yeah, that would be approximately right.
Yeah.
Have you investigated that at all?
Well, we know we can do that because it's within the what is it? It's conforming. Because the building itself is conforming, so we would be able to do that. We can use just that space. We're just asking for a little additional space to be able to bump it out a little ways into the yard. Again, not encroaching on any other of the setbacks.
See, I fully understand. The reason that I asked this question is because when we apply a variance, it stays with the property for the life of the property. Mm-hmm. So when we have to make a decision, it has to be something that is not just unique to your son's situation or to your situation. You could, for the most part, decide to move in a year or 2 years or whatever, and you'd be leaving that variance in place, and that's why I'm asking that question. Mm-hmm. It's always easier and more convenient to keep it without applying a variance, unless it can't be done any other way.
So help me understand. It goes with the property. Mm-hmm. So if we were to sell this house or leave it, and somebody else purchased it, they would be able to do what? What would
they would have that? They would have that bathroom as if we applied a variance to it. They would then have a variance to have that. They would have that bathroom usage. Okay. So what we try to do is we try not to just give variances out for just for, for a need, unless that it's at all possible to be done somewhere else. That was more so what I'm trying to explain.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you have in this 13 by 15 room.
Nothing.
Yeah.
It's just blank, just space.
And I think to speak to the point about the variance being connected, the variance being with the property, is that unfortunately it sets a precedence for other properties in that zone, to where what happens when your neighbor, be it 5 years or 50 years from now, says, well, we want to do a big game room or something like this, it can have a domino effect.
I understand. I've served on a board of adjustment, and as well as planning board, so I understand.
Thank you.
But I wanted to make this attempt to be able to have a little bit more usable space for our son, which is the reason I'm here.
Can he access and get in and out of this 13 by 15 room fairly easy?
Yes. It has French doors that open up. When we bought the property and I had the walls done, I also had the floor raised a little bit, so it's wheelchair flat accessible.
Any other questions?
Well, I do.
Sure.
The city has stated it seems the applicant may have other options instead of increasing the size. Have you discussed these options with the city?
Yes, I mean, the options that as I understand it, is we just have to build onto the house. And it's a small house, so we wouldn't be able to go back very far, or we'd be covering up the septic tank. And that just gives us another bathroom. It doesn't really give us another space for our son, really, to have kind of his own space.
And then may I ask the city, are there any other options that she has not just mentioned?
Yeah, I think our understanding is the options are to build the bathroom within the existing accessory structure, or add to the existing home, or within the existing home. But I understand there may not be the best options for her particular situation, but there are other options.
Does anybody know anything about the? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I just want to understand, what is the den used now for? Is it, you said it's empty, nobody's using it. Why not build the bathroom in there and go outside that den?
Well, we basically haven't used it for anything, because we were hoping to be able to finish off the room that's there and adding the bathroom to it, as opposed to just going ahead and finishing it off and the bathroom taking up a large part of the usable space for him to be able to get around otherwise.
To finish it up for what?
Just as an extra space for him. Right now, he has his bedroom, which in our house is pretty small here. And, this is a 48-year-old man that just kind of needs a space where he can go and read and, play Madam football or whatever that game is that he plays.
Just for information purposes, will this have air conditioning in there?
Is it what?
Will it have air conditioning?
Air conditioning.
AC?
Yes, we would put air conditioning in. It has we're thinking a mini split system, small.
I see that the plan does, and we do try not to, become architects here, of course. But I do see the plan is for a full bath. And I completely understand the need for, him to have his private getaway kind of space, his own man cave. What about the option of a half bath for such, to accommodate such needs?
Yeah, we could do that. We could make it a half bath. It's the available space in order to be able to move a power chair. This is a guy who's 6'2" and weighs 200 pounds, so he's not in a little chair, and he's not in a push chair, because I can't push him.
I'm just trying to figure out a way to stay within the existing structure square footage while still giving him the options and the dignity.
Could I ask Luis again, have there been any objections from the neighbors? Any comments at all?
Yeah, I believe,
There was one about construction.
The construction.
The parking complaint.
yeah, there was one letter. I don't believe it was a letter of objection.
It was a parking complaint, more so for
Yeah.
when the construction goes down.
Yeah.
That complaint, by the way, had to do with pavers that were put in the driveway a number of years ago. We didn't own the property at that point in time. And I think it addressed the fact that the construction folks did not park in the driveway, which is what they were working on, but it.
You weren't even in, it wasn't your property
It
at the
wasn't
time.
our property then, no.
Excuse me, I have a question for staff. If I'm reading it correctly, the current structure that's there right now is approximately 232 square feet, but the code is 200 square feet, so it was kind of grandfathered in 32 square feet bigger. Is that correct?
Yeah, according to our report. Now, by the dimensions, it comes out to about 200 square feet, so I'm not sure exactly where if it is indeed over by 32 square feet, but it is at the maximum.
Okay.
Either way you look at it.
And I guess if you've been a member of a board of adjustments or something, if it's a all yes or all no, I guess my question would be if there was a negotiation point of perhaps limiting, and because you've mentioned a couple of times it's a little addition, which compared to a big house it would be a little addition, but to a 200 square foot structure, an additional 120 square feet is almost doubling it, hypothetically in footprint size.
Yeah.
If that would be a consideration before something goes to a vote, and I don't know if I'm allowed to even say that kind of a thing, but it seems like, somebody mentioned a half bath or reducing the footprint, or maybe you split the piece between a little bit that has to jut out versus going into the structure. And once again, we're not architects here or designers, but
I appreciate that thought, and I'm really receptive and open to any extra little bump out space, because again, with a handicapped person, it makes all the difference.
Could I ask a question about handicap? I don't know anything about the ADA, but if I could ask staff or someone who might know, does the Americans with Disabilities Act give us any kind of leeway, any wiggle room to do anything on that?
Not
No.
as it applies to this variance. There may be other avenues, and I would just suggest that the applicant seek legal counsel.
Any more?
Yeah, I have one more question. You made us aware that this is more so a need for when your son is in this room, as to use as a bathroom, so he doesn't have to go to the house in case it's raining, all that stuff. But in here you have what looks like also a handicap shower as well.
And we don't have to have that.
Right.
We don't have to have that. The architect who drew that just assumed handicap bathroom, he put in the whole thing. But we certainly can do without the shower, because he can shower in the house. We've modified the interior bathroom for him to be able to do that. It's just really being
I
away
get you,
from.
believe me.
Yeah.
I understand what you'd like to do,
Yeah.
and I feel for you. I'd love to, I know this would be great for him to have a place to stay and have, but you're almost making this to where it looks like it could almost be a second auxiliary home. It is. It's just without a kitchen. No, I know that's not your intention, but
So to your point, we certainly can scale it back from that drawing, and we don't need a shower in there. But to have a toilet and a sink, to the other point that was made, would be helpful, and if we could bump that out and not have it be in the room proper, so that we don't have to build walls around it, which again just kind of reduces the amount of ambulatory space that he has.
Can I ask a question? Have you thought about a covered walkway? You mentioned there's a problem with rain. If he had a covered walkway to go from the bathhouse into the house, would that be a possible solution?
Well, let me clarify. Rain is just wet. And when you're sitting in a power chair that's mostly metal, if it's lightning, he's very fearful of that.
It's an expensive piece of equipment too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Any further comments or questions?
I have a question for the city. If they eliminate the bath area, how far out will we be on this decision to just have the bathroom? Will that be considered?
I guess you're asking whether or not if they eliminate the full bath, like a shower, eliminate the
Just
shower. Yeah, it still exceeds the maximum because the existing structure is at 200 square. The existing accessory structure is at the maximum. Any increase to that footprint is increasing above that maximum allowance, and without the hardship due to the shape of the property, the typical hardship issues, our recommendation would still be the same.
Well, I'll ask, is there any way possible that you can see fit for it to be just a half bath and be inside?
In the existing
In the
13 by
existing.
13.
Mm-hmm. If that's our only option, that's what we'll do, yes.
You're just not giving at least me a avenue for me to accept it. I'm sorry, because like I said, we can't make decisions on a specific incident. It stays with the property.
Understand.
So what you're doing is you're asking for a variance for your son, but it's an addition to the home that makes it almost into like another apartment. I know you don't.
Mm-hmm.
So
No, I understand what you're saying. It's not connected, but there is a bird cage that goes from the house to that room.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, are we ready for a motion? Anybody in the audience wish to speak on this item? Okay, are we ready for a motion?
Herb, just
Sir.
as a point, I just looked up, the minimum size for an ADA toilet is 5 feet wide. That doesn't include a sink, but a minimum ADA width for a toilet enclosure is 5 feet.
How does that affect this application?
You had asked earlier if anybody knew
Yeah, so,
dimensions
I mean,
of ADA.
does the ADA require us to require the city to allow something?
No, I was just
Not
answering
in the
your question.
context of a variance application, but again, the applicant can seek legal counsel. There may be other
Okay,
avenues.
there may be some federal rights that you have, is what they're saying.
That is not what I said.
Oh. Well, federal law does have some possible application, according to John.
I would advise the board not to give legal advice either,
Okay.
for the record,
That's not legal. All right.
just for the record.
All right, so we're ready for a motion?
Motion to deny.
Is there a second?
I second.
Discussion on the motion to deny the variance. Let me say something. I'll just quote from the Code of Ordinances. I hope it's not legal advice, but the code says, in determining whether to grant a variance, the board shall not consider any evidence that is based upon conditions, including financial or health conditions, which are personal to the applicant or any member of the applicant's family or household. Okay, so let's have a vote, please, then.
Ms. Turner?
Deny.
The motion is to deny.
So
Yes,
it
sorry.
would be a yes
Yes,
if you're in favor
sorry.
of the motion.
Yes.
You'll get that after 10 years.
I know.
Mr. Eisner?
Yes.
Mr. Burris?
Yes.
Mr. Rabowski?
No.
Mr. Elliott?
Yes. Sorry, but you gave it a really good effort. My compliments to you. You got a beautiful home, but I hope you can work out some other solutions to your problem.
Thank you. I know
Thank
you
you
have a
very
tough
much.
job. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
My apologies as well.
Bring it up at staff comment in the city.
I would like to ask you, if you would, to go to the city commission and ask them to change our rules of procedures so that we can consider situations like yours. We've been trying to get that rule changed. And if you would speak to your commissioners, please, and ask them to change that, because in my view, that's a ridiculous adherence. Thank you.
Okay, the next item is number 6, two-part variance to reduce required side yard setback and rear yard setback in Gano Park subdivision, which is, in case you don't know, for our vast television audience, east of Tarpon, east of US 19.
Yes, this application is for a three-part variance to reduce the required side street, yard, and rear setbacks to allow for the construction of a single-family residence on a non-conforming lot of record. The property is zoned single-family residential district R70A. It's located at Butler Court and Sunshine Drive. The applicant is requesting this variance in order to build a house that he's submitted. There are plans in the packet that show the survey of the property and the plans. It shows, illustrates pretty well what we consider to be the unique feature of this property, and that's the width of the property. The side yard setback, which would be it's at a corner lot, so it would also be the street yard, has a curve to it, which it's an unusual shape that narrows the width of the lot at the center of the lot. And of course, you can't build a house, or typically can't build a house with curves that typically with right angles. So we do find that there is a hardship on this, and based on the criteria and those factors that we mentioned, we are recommending approval of this variance. Again, it is for a three-part variance for the side street setback and the side yard and the rear setbacks. And they're fairly minor setbacks that they are setback variances that they are requesting also. But it is also to build on a non-conforming lot of record. The applicant does own adjacent property under the same ownership, so we do need approval by the Board of Adjustment to build on this non-conforming lot as a separate lot of record. But again, our recommendation is for approval. We did receive correspondence on this, which has either been included in your packet or was on the dais this evening. So you do have those correspondences.
Okay, thank you. I imagine there are some people in the audience who wish to speak on this item, but our procedure is for the board to ask questions first of the staff, and then the applicant can be heard, and then we have cross-examination, and we'll proceed from there. Is that okay? So any board questions at this time? To my left?
No.
Am I right?
I'll ask a question. Has the technical, I don't know what their name is, the technical department determined how much more water would be distributed by the adding of the size of this house?
No, I mean, that's typically a permit requirement when they come in for their building permit. It is reviewed to make sure that that runoff is adequately handled. So, I mean, it will be a determination once they go in, they come in for a specific permit.
So the present permit that they have, there's been a determination how much runoff there is. And if we approve that, then they would go back and see how much runoff is according to our approval, if that was the case?
Yeah, typically, yeah, that will be part of the standard review of any home. And yeah, it will be a part of the review of this home as well.
So for argument's sake, if we were able to and agree to say and give this variance, they still could be restricted in building if it's excessive runoff.
Yeah, absolutely. That will be a part of the review.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we are just looking at the setbacks at this time.
Any further questions from the board of the staff? All right, is the applicant here?
Mike Kuskudis, 623 East Tarpon Avenue. I actually represent the applicant. With the board's permission, I'd like to reserve any comment in case there's any objection. That way I can address everything at once. Thank you.
According to our procedure, the board has the right to ask questions of the applicant.
I just had a quick question. And it's probably me. It's a 3-part variance, but I'm only seeing 2 of the variances listed. What's the third? Am I reading that wrong?
No, you're not. It is not listed on the front. It's the let's see. It is in the package, though. I did notice that. Well, starting at the bottom of page 1, section 224.02 regarding non-conforming lots of record. Paragraph F of that, well, paragraph B starting at the top of page 2 says that if at any time the owner of such non-conforming lots owns adjoining unimproved land, then the lot or land shall be combined to meet the minimum requirements of this code. Again, this is a non-conforming lot. F says that the Board of Adjustment may consider variances to the requirements of this. And so, yeah, that is the other variance being requested, to build on a non-conforming lot of record.
Rather than add the 2 adjoining lots together to build a conforming lot?
Yes.
So at such time in the future, it could be split off as a secondary lot and built on also.
Yeah, I mean, it is already a separate lot of record, but by code, if they're non-conforming, then they should be combined unless they get approval to build a separate lot.
So for clarification, it's a 3-part variance, but the request under General Information Section A lists to reduce the required side street and the rear yard setback, so that's 1 and 2. The third would be to not have to combine the lots, correct?
That's correct.
So that's your 3-part variance.
Thank you. And staff recommends all 3 of those.
Yes, that's correct. Staff is recommending approval.
Where's our lot number? I'm sorry, I had it and I,
10?
thank you.
And the,
Sorry.
And what is the
Got it.
second lot number?
I know.
Lot 11.
So to not build on 1011 combo, to build on 10 alone as a non-conforming, and then plus the other 2 setbacks.
Yeah, and
Understood.
the basis of that recommendation is that's how all the other lots in that subdivision have developed on individual lots of that size.
Except, are all the other lots that have developed that way on non-conforming lots, do they have an adjoining piece that would had to have been?
Well, I don't know the history behind each lot, but yeah, that could be the difference. But yeah, just to match the existing development pattern of the neighborhood, it would be a hardship to require this lot to be twice as large in effect as all the other lots.
So is that like on page 3 here on item number 4, the analysis is saying there at the bottom, where many of the lots do not meet the minimum 60-foot lot with requirements of the zoning district. I'm curious if that is would contribute to them being non-conforming. To answer that question, if there's other non-conforming lots that are indeed being built on in the area.
May I respond to some of the
Please.
concerns? Okay. This is an older subdivision. Many of the lots out there are non-conforming. My client is a developer with the intent of building several houses. like all the lots out there, I guess not all, but I would imagine most of them, if not all of them, are non-conforming. If I bought Lot A to build a house and I decided I wanted Lot B next to me, which is a non-conforming lot, I think what I think is somebody suggesting is now I can't build a house on Lot 1. I'd have to actually use the second lot that I bought as part of constructing the first lot. And that if you start doing that, then anybody who buys a lot, that buys an adjacent lot to build a couple houses, any developer, because they're non-conforming lots, then you're going to force that person to have to, build one house. And that's not the intent. That's not actually the way that subdivision has been developed over the years.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, we do, and I didn't go through the full report, but on page 4, we do go through the criteria for granting approval to build on a non-conforming lot of record. The criteria are that the lot consists of at least of one entire lot of record on the effective date of this code. The lot was not created in violation of a previous zoning ordinance. The lot was not combined with a neighboring lot under common ownership in order to allow the existing improvements on the neighboring development lot to meet applicable setbacks. So it does meet those criteria. So that does further support our recommendation.
And also, just for the board's understanding, this was approved prior, but the setbacks were actually greater. Our setback request is a lot smaller, I think. One is 1 foot 1 inch, and the other is 11 inches. That's the variance that we're requesting with regard to the setback requirements. The previous approved variance was a lot larger as far as setback requests. So this is actually, we've come in and asked for less of a encroachment onto the setback than previously granted by this board.
Okay, are we ready for questions from the audience? Yes, sir. Please, let's take this gentleman in the second row and state your name, please.
My name is Tom Leet, and I am the president of Common Elements for Lake Tarpon Sail and Tennis. We have 5 associations and 248 homes. I'm sure you're all aware of Grandview Estates, which borders one of our associations, 2 really.
Could you try and move the mic a little closer, sir, so we can pick you up on television?
How's that?
That's much better.
Okay. And I guess this variance makes us a little nervous because we're already having problems with our lift station being on the property line between the 2 developments. And I think our biggest concern is that a builder would come in, build on smaller lots, and it would overcapacitate the area, and also the lift stations and the water supply and the road system in the area. We would like to see the homes built on a normal size. And we were kind of concerned that this would set a precedent. And so that's why we are here tonight. And that is, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
And I just want to make for
Could
clarification.
you use the mic, please?
Of course, I apologize. I just want to, for clarification, that granting of a variance for any individual application does not set a legal precedent for future applications. Because you are required to evaluate each individual application on its merits and the evidence that's presented at the hearing on the individual application based on the property itself and not on the surrounding properties, you are not at risk of setting any type of legal precedent for any future applications that come before you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Peter Logan. I, 1639 Plaza Place. I'm also the owner of Lot 12, which is adjacent to a Lot 10 and 11, downhill from the construction, or the site. I sent a letter I'm not sure whether you guys have it. You do? Okay, that's great. And I included a picture I took yesterday. Do you guys have the picture?
Yes.
We do.
Okay. So if you look at that picture, my house is like all the way down in the valley there, right? And we've already had considerable runoff when they clear cut the land, okay? So I've already been in touch with Tarpon, the town of Tarpon, to mitigate this problem, and they've had them build a trench or whatever. But, and I tell you the truth, I wasn't even aware that this was a non-conforming lot. My concern was the offsets, because as you build a bigger home, you have more runoff, because there's not enough area or grass or whatever to absorb water. Now, I know you say that, you know, the study, blah, 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 but physics is physics, right? If
I'm not hearing you or understanding what you're saying, so.
you know,
Please.
can you hear me now?
Yes. Because you're using words like blah, 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 and I don't know what that blah, blah, blah is your definition.
Okay, my definition of blah, blah, blah is, once you get the variance, you get the variance, right? So any runoff issues at that point, well, we'll do it with the building permit, or we'll do it down the road. We're kicking the can down the road. I'm not happy with that. Okay, I would rather it be settled here. And the runoff is a problem. It's going to affect my property value, both for my home and for my my lot behind my home. Okay. 2, it was stated earlier that in general, the plots on Illinois Court are non-conforming. That's absolutely not true. I have a 60 by 100 lot conforming, okay? Every house on my block is conforming. Across the street is conforming. There may be some that's not conforming down on the actual lake. I don't know, I haven't measured those. So to come and say that everything's conforming, or non-conforming, it's just not true. Additionally, most of the houses in this area are like 1,500 square feet. My home's about 1,500 square foot. We're going to start building McMansions. Again, it's going to change the character of the neighborhood. And again, it will affect my property value. I'm going to have 4 giant houses looking down on me. No, no good.
Is that your statement, sir?
That's my statement.
Okay, questions?
Yes. The photograph you took this morning or this week, in the background it has 2-story homes.
No, well, it's a 1-story home in the,
Further back, there's 2 of them that 2-story
oh,
homes.
across the street?
I don't know if they're across the street, but you can see them on
Yeah,
the photograph.
that's across the street, and yeah, that's a 2-story home.
Okay.
Well, actually, I don't know. It's a garage underneath. It's a 1-story home with a garage underneath.
The giant homes, the tall houses, correct? Compared to the one up front.
No, that's a 1,500 square foot house, if not less.
Okay. But they are big homes.
No,
Considering to the
I just
one
said it's not big homes. It's a 1,500 square foot home.
compared to the one that is up front on the lower left of the photograph.
No,
The
it's not.
ones to
It's
the
not a bigger
right.
home. It's not a bigger home than that. It's taller because the garage is under the house.
Still a high home. It's not a 8-10 foot home. It's 18-20 feet, isn't it?
That's not. That doesn't make the home bigger. It makes it taller.
Okay, it makes it taller. You did mention as far as the homes being built on this particular, the house being built on this particular lot, being a big house or a tall house, overshadowing your area. I'm sorry. Overshadowing the house that you have. Isn't that what you meant?
That is one of my concerns. Yes.
Okay. Then, you're talking about the character of the neighborhood?
That's correct, yeah.
Some of these homes are way taller than the one on the lower left of the photograph. What will the character, how will it change the character of the neighborhood? Some homes are low, some homes are high.
Yeah, I disagree.
Where does that fit?
I disagree. I believe that a 1,500 square foot home is average for the neighborhood. If you're building a 2,200 square foot or a 3,000 square foot home on 2 stories, that's going to change the neighborhood.
My understanding is of the request for this variance is going from 20 feet to 18 feet and from 15 feet to 13.6. Does that make the house a giant house, a big house?
I don't know what it makes the house. My concern with the setbacks is the runoff.
We do have in our packet here the blueprint for the proposed house, and the living area is 1,695 square feet.
Okay, good. And I guess that addresses my that concern.
See, you
But
used word,
my concern, main concern is still the runoff.
but the runoff is gonna be a difference of 2 feet.
I thought it was 5 feet.
It's 2 feet on one side and
Right.
1.5 feet on another side.
Really? Because
Yes, sir.
you know, I came and saw the application last week, and it went from 10 to 5
Or a-
something like that.
So
I mean, I could be wrong, but
See, my better question to ask you is, you're here and you're presenting to us, calling these McMansions.
yes,
A McMansion from a 1,500 square foot house in your neighborhood to a 5,500 square foot house, I would agree with you. To change it from a 1,500 square foot house to a, even if you say 1,600 square foot house, because you're adding less than a foot or a foot, is not going to change the runoff amount.
okay, I disagree, but you know, everybody can
Well-
say what they're going to say.
I'm happy to listen to what you have to say.
I've said it,
Hear me out. Let me finish what I was going to say.
certainly.
You made mention also that since they cleared the property, you've gotten an excessive amount of water. That would be normal when you clear a property
Of course.
did you want to say something?
No, I'm agreeing with you. That would be
So
normal.
until the property is built and the water is then funneled down accordingly.
Okay, so your contention then is that after you clear the land and it's still all sand and dirt, that after you build a hardscape on it, a house with a roof and driveway and all different hardscape, that I'm going to have less runoff?
No, we're not here to discuss the fact of whether they're allowed to build a house or not.
Of
They-
course, it's their house.
okay,
They can build a
so
house.
Let's let them, one person at a time, please.
Yeah.
Sure.
This is what I'm trying to explain to you so that you understand what you're asking us to do. We cannot decide whether they're allowed to or not allowed to build a house. Okay, you follow me with that?
I do.
What they're asking for is a variance to change it by a foot or 2.
I understand.
So whether, we can't sit there and discuss that you now have more runoff because they're gonna build a house there. It's a lot. If they have a permit, they're entitled to build.
Yeah, I agree. They're entitled to build a house
So
within the
And please, one
bounds
at a
of,
time,
without a variance.
Mr. Eisner, why don't you finish your statement? and
Well,
then-
I'm trying to answer you brought up 4 or 5 points, and I'm trying to find out if I can help you with those 4 or 5 points to maybe give me something that I
Right,
am able to agree with you.
okay.
All right, Mr. Logan, your turn. Now, you can respond to his question or his comment. Something different. You've already said this strange problem.
There's nothing really different to say. Obviously, they have the right to build a home. They own the property, they should be able to build a home, I agree. My contention is that they should build it within the rules of the zoning. I don't think they need a variance. I think they should adjust their plans to build it on the, the existing, within the existing rules. And if that means combining lots, then that's fine with me too.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, could I
Yes.
make brief comment, just for the benefit of the public, because I know the board knows this, but there was mention of stormwater and permitting would have to be done by the building department. Also, they'd have to get permits through SwiftMud. This board does not determine whether or not the stormwater runoff is appropriate or not.
Correct.
So they make no determination as to whether or not the plans meet with any other state agencies or the city's stormwater plan. So this board, that evidence as far as this application may or may not be relevant, but this board doesn't determine that, just for y'all's benefit.
Okay. Ready for any other public input? I'd like to ask a couple of questions about the trees. I see there's I think I counted 7 oak trees on the property, according to your tree survey. And the house is gonna take away several of them. Is that gonna, Mr. Cooper, you wanna address that? I don't. Okay, you got it, just on the record, can you come up? I don't know how relevant it is, but there's some discussion about the location of the house, and we try to save the trees if we can.
Hello. The trees that are existing on that lot, which is the southwest corner, are existing and will not be removed at the backyard. There's no permit required for any trees on that lot.
I can't hear him.
Yeah, Mr. Cooper, you gotta speak into the microphone,
This
it's
one.
amplifying your
That's
voice.
the light.
Okay, how about this one?
Yeah,
All right, both of them. No, none of the trees on that property will be removed. Those are
Thank you.
actually in
All
the
right,
backyard, the oaks.
all right, that's good to know, thank you. All right, Mr. Logan, you wanna make some more comments?
Yeah, I just want to comment.
Something new, please?
Yeah. I just want to say that he's absolutely right. The existing trees will not be removed because he's already removed pretty much all the trees from the property when he clear cut the land. That's all I have to say.
Okay, are we ready for a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I believe the applicant said he wanted at least given
Oh,
the
I'm sorry.
opportunity to respond to
Thank
the
you,
public
thank you.
comment.
Okay. Does the board have any further questions of anybody before we take a motion?
No.
All right, let's call for a motion then, please.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
That's completely the 2-part or 3-part, as the case may be, the whole thing, right?
The whole thing.
All right, discussion on the motion. All right, let's have a roll call, please.
Ms. Turner?
Yes, approve.
Mr. Eisner?
Yes.
Mr. Burris? Mr. Abowski?
Yes.
Mr. Elliott?
Yes. Motion's been carried. Thank you for your patience. Moving on to the next item then is number 7, 1108 Goshen Road, just off South Florida Avenue. Application number 18-90. Mr. Cerna?
Yes, this application is to authorize variance to reduce the required rear yard setback to allow for addition of a screened porch on an existing single-family residence. The property is zoned single-family residential R100. It is at 1108 Goshen Road. The applicant, the rear yard of the principal structure is currently 28.8 feet. The request is to reduce the rear setback to 18 feet. The subdivision was platted in 1957. The residence on the property was constructed in 1987. Since the principal structure does not meet the current setback requirements, it is currently considered a legally existing non-conforming structure. We have reviewed this application again for the criteria for granting a variance. The hardship in this case, the unique aspect of it in regard to the criteria is the irregular shape of the lot. It is a cul-de-sac lot that does not meet the 100-foot minimum lot depth requirement of the zoning district. So based on that uniqueness of the property and the other criteria of the district, staff is of this application rather, staff is recommending approval of the variance with the standard 2-year expiration date.
Okay, thank you. Comments from the board, questions?
This may be a question for the applicant for the screen porch. Is there already an existing slab or pavers, or is it just looking to screen in an existing porch? Or to actually pour a slab or lay pavers? Staff or anyone?
Yeah, based on the survey, I don't know if the applicant's available, but there is existing concrete where the screen porch would go.
Okay. And this is not considered a permanent structure because of the roof or lack of roof, which we've dealt with that kind of situation in previous applications. If that rings a bell.
Well, it would be considered a structure subject to the building setback, so that's the reason for the variance request.
Mr. Cerna, number 4, public correspondence. I hate to belabor this point, but inquiries but no public input. Do you have any idea what that means? Just questions from they called in and said what's going on kind of thing, or what?
Yeah, my understanding is, it was just inquiries, but no one submitting comment or objections.
Anybody from the audience? And is the applicant here? Okay. Ready for a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second the motion.
Discussion? Seeing none, roll call please.
Ms. Turner,
Yes, approve.
Mr. Eisner,
Yes.
Mr. Burris,
Yes.
Mr. Urbowski,
Yes.
Chairman Elliott.
Yes, motion's carried. And the last item is number 8, 18-91, variance to increase the maximum required height of a fence, 305 Bay Street, which is just south of Craig Park. Staff, please.
Yes, the applicant is requesting approval for the construction of a 10-foot high trellis. The maximum requirement for fences is 6 feet. So the applicant is requesting this variance request. According to the property appraiser, the records, the home was constructed in 1987, and the patio was added on this property in 2005. Staff has reviewed this request and for compliance with the criteria, and we are recommending denial. Primarily, there's not the applicant has not submitted evidence of a hardship. There are other options to a 10-foot high fence or trellis. There is the option, of course, to do landscaping. So again, our recommendation is for denial.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
Yes.
Mr. Glanzer?
I'm assuming that a trellis is considered a fence, even though it's kind of a landscaping, it's a structure built for landscaping to climb on or do, and it's not, it doesn't sound like it's running the length, it sounds like it was trellis. It's more like a shield,
Yeah, and there are pictures of what was actually constructed. So I mean, in this case, it was constructed before the variance request.
I understand,
and
I
it
understand it encroached on the neighbor's property as well.
Yeah, and that is an issue, but a separate issue. But you know, it is pretty substantial. It's more than what you might consider a simple garden trellis, but it would qualify. It would meet the definition of a fence in this case.
Could you read us the definition of a fence, please, Mr. Cerna? That's in the code, I believe, just to make sure we're talking about a fence. Any more questions?
I was curious here, page 2 on point number 1, where you're saying another option is to consider installing tall landscaping except hedges. What's the reasoning or code for having the exception for hedges?
Yeah, I'm not certain about why that's stated as it is. I'll check and see. I'll consult with staff to see if there is if there is a restriction on the hedges.
There is. It's supposed to be 6 feet from the front of the house, back and around, and everything from the front of the house going forward is 4 feet.
In height or setback?
Height.
Height. Oh, interesting. Good to know.
It's the technical know-how I have floating around in my head.
Random knowledge.
Random knowledge.
Yeah, is there a reason for that random knowledge?
Useless information.
The definition section is in the back behind the Board of Adjustments.
Yeah, the definition of fence, it's an artificially erected barrier of any material or combination of material erected to enclose or screen areas of land.
All right.
Sounds like a trellis
So-
would fit that definition.
So it sounds like a fence to me. Is legal counsel concur? That's a fence?
If staff, I mean, if staff is going to interpret it that way, I would also say based on the evidence that's presented, it's up to you to make that legal determination, but I would say it meets the definition of a fence.
All right, any more questions from my left or from my right? Okay. All right, is the applicant here? Would you please come forward, state your name and address, ma'am?
Okay. Hi, my name is Kathy Hallett, and I live at 305 Bay Street. And I have all kinds of paperwork here. But anyway, I want to give you the definition of a trellis before I start. By Webster's Dictionary, a trellis, a frame of crossed strips as of wood on which vines or other climbing plants are grown. Lattice. And that's by Mr. Webster. Okay. I do have pictures that you can pass around. Wait a minute, I'll get those. Of my backyard. And the structure that was built by my neighbor.
Is it gonna be different than what we already have?
Okay. I am going to read because I'm nervous. I am requesting a variance for my 10-foot tall garden trellis that I have always called a trellis, never a fence, so that I do not have to look at my neighbor's 2-story garage built of cinder blocks, which abuts directly to my property line. This is an intrusive structure, creates a 20-foot tall solid concrete wall towering over my little patio area. It is also disturbing that inside my house, my bedroom and bathroom shower is visible from the 2nd-story windows of this garage. I have pictures of you that I'm passing around. The Planning and Zoning Department has recommended that my variance be denied. The analysis, paragraph 1 of the Planning and Zoning Department's report states, staff does not find that the site conditions would constitute a hardship to the landowner. I respectfully disagree with its analysis because the construction of this 20-foot garage has created an unsightly physical surrounding which has deterred me from my patio. I have enjoyed my backyard patio for many years in the winter, nightly sitting enjoying the ambience of my flowers and garden. This ambience has been eliminated by the erection of this structure, so I believe the site condition has caused me hardship. Also, in its report, the Planning and Zoning Department suggests that I install tall landscaping as a solution to my problem. In the area where I have the trellis, I have a 3-year-old tabua tree. I think that's in one of my pictures. And I do not have enough room between my tree and the neighbor's fence to plant anything large enough without encroaching on my tree. Therefore, a vine-covered trellis is a unique and beautiful backdrop to my garden. Hopefully, my tabua tree will fill out the area above the trellis someday, and I will have my much required and enjoyed privacy again. I would also like to point out that there are other neighbors who have trellises that exceed 6 feet. I have pictures of some of those that I'm sure they did not get. So I'll pass those to you. I left her. It is not my intention to get anyone in trouble. I am trying to demonstrate my position. Either these neighbors didn't get a permit or were given a permit to put up their trellis, which is all I am asking for to fix my problem. I was unaware of the fact that I was supposed to get a permit. Otherwise, I would have applied for one. However, all I ask is equal treatment to keep my trellis as a solution to my situation. But the most important thing is that my trellis does not harm my neighbors, since it is barely visible to anyone but me. It stands now and will be completely hidden once it is covered with the vines I intend to grow on it. As the trellis stands now uncovered with vines, it cannot be seen from Bay Street or the alley behind my house without walking up my driveway and onto my patio. I have lined the alley side of my patio with flowering shrubs and plants, hiding my patio from passing cars and neighbors. In rebuttal to my neighbor's opposition to my trellis, which I only received last night at 8 o'clock at night, his attorney has stated that Mr. Prado reported me to code enforcement because I encroached his property with the installation of the trellis by a few inches. Tit for tat, what can I say? I had complained to the city and HPB board about the permit Mr. Prado was given. The 20-foot cinder block building is totally out of scale to his one-floor bungalow home, as stated in the historical guidelines. I do have those if you'd like to see those. Have you? That's the best example they have. The HPB board disregarded the historical district's guidelines as stated on page 43 to 49 of the historical guidelines distributed at City Hall. I also assume Mr. Prado cannot see my trellis from his home, only possibly one small window in the side of his structure. I have not made an issue of Mr. Prado's front wall on Bay Street is 1 foot over my property line, as shown on Mr. Prado's recent survey. My trellis is frequently called a fence. It is not a fence, and I told you that in the beginning by Webster's. Anyways, while I fully understand that the garage will remain standing as is, I believe my trellis is a simple solution to help alleviate the hardship my neighbor's garage has created for me. with no harm being brought against my neighbors. So respectfully, I ask the board to consider the totality of the situation and grant me my variance request. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the board, from the applicant?
Yes, I have a
All
question.
right, Mr. Burris?
On the initial pictures that we have, it shows the structure without a roof.
That's from the alley?
Well, this is what we got without.
I know, you can't see it.
No. All I'm asking is, these pictures here have no roof, on the structure, there is no roof. Now, on the pictures you gave us, the structure
I
has
know,
roof.
you can't see it from the alley because all of my shrubs.
His question, is there a roof on the garage now?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, yes, there is.
Okay.
In the garage also has windows now, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is
it
a
is
gara-
being,
Is it a garage? Is it a dwelling? What is it?
it's a two-story garage with, Mr. Prado said it was gonna be an office on the second floor, but it's an office with a full-size, bathroom with a shower, and
you
that's
also-
an office.
And you also mentioned that is exactly on your property line, the structure?
No, it's like from my patio, I would say 9 feet, maybe 12 feet from my patio.
It's
But
not-
there's a fence in between the garage and and my patio.
Okay.
He has a fence. He has a 6-foot fence.
I understand that. My point is, you said that it was right on the property line.
Correct.
Now you're saying it's 9 feet?
Oh,
I believe the fence is on the property line, not
the
the
fence
garage.
is on the property line, not the garage.
Not the garage? Or-
Oh, excuse me, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Also, it shows on one of the older pictures that we have without the roof, that there is a car garage on the front of it.
I don't know which ones we're talking about. I gotta,
I don't know if you've seen these pictures. That's the pictures that we got. That's why we kind of, you see the car garage right in front of it?
the city, oh, yeah. That's the front of the garage. And my house is over here. That's his house.
In other words, for him to have a structure like this, he got a permit from the city, correct?
Yeah, he
So
got
we
a-
can't argue this doesn't
No,
belong here.
it's done.
It doesn't belong here.
No,
Okay, you're not
All right, you need to
contending
get
that.
back to
Oh,
the
no,
podium.
it's done.
Mrs. Hallett, can you get back to the podium?
no, I can't.
And-
No, he got a permit.
For purposes of the record, the gentleman in the front row handed something to Mr. Burris. Oh, okay.
He already
All right.
submitted this.
I just wanted to make sure that wasn't new evidence that we needed to get to the clerk. Of course. I just wanted to make sure we had the complete record.
Okay, that's all I want to ask. Thank you.
Any other questions from this side? All right, Mr. Ice.
Here we go. Thank you. Hi, how are you? You made mention that this structure has caused you hardship, but you failed to explain at least what hardship, other than the fact that you just don't like it.
It's just taken away every speck of privacy I have. I can stand in my shower and look straight up in their window. I can lay in my bed and look straight in their window. It's like, I've lived there 20 some odd years and I've loved it. I love my house, I love my neighbors, I love my neighborhood. And I have never been,
I hear what you're saying. They make curtains.
and they're not even here.
I know. No, I'm saying they make curtains
Right.
so that you're saying to
Oh,
me.
right. Oh, of
Explaining
course.
to me that he could look in, or she could look in, or
Oh,
whoever.
of course, I have to
But that's why
change my
they have,
whole lifestyle now, yeah.
that's why they have curtains on
Yeah.
windows.
Right, I will.
But he legally
Yes, he did. He did.
has gone through the.
Yes, he did.
Right.
But
So,
the HPB board should never,
right, but that.
have done it.
We can't even begin
No.
to discuss that.
No, it's
So
done.
that's spilt milk, whatever you think
Yeah, it's done.
shouldn't have been done.
it shouldn't have been done.
So I'm still trying to figure out the word that you're using when you say that
Hardship?
it's hardship, yes. Because a hardship is not that you don't like it.
Oh, well, I just want my privacy. I want that little trellis, or the big trellis, as you put it. I want the trellis to come up, fill it with vines, and then I have my tree, and my tree will eventually cover the top part. I just don't want to see it. I want to be able to enjoy my garden. Just like you can see, I have a garden. He doesn't have a garden. He has a big structure in his backyard.
He's in the middle of building something. I don't think he's ready for a garden yet. You know, I'm just saying, I'm not even beginning, I'm not taking sides or anything. He's in construction. It's not the
Right,
time that
right.
you know, you don't put a garden there while
Right.
people are trampling around trying to build it. Did you want to?
Mr. Burr says.
Mr. Burr.
Yes, you mentioned that you don't like it because of the window that you have in the structure, your house, the house itself, whether you're taking a shower from your bathroom or your kitchen or whatever.
No,
You
it's
just
on
don't
the
like-
back side of my house.
I'm sorry?
It's on the back side of my house.
I understand that. That's where the trellis is, in the back of
Right,
the house.
right.
But it has nothing to do with any window of the house or anything like that, looking at this structure and being,
Oh, right, right.
okay,
Yeah.
so let's leave the structure of the house alone and look at this trellis that you have here in the back and then the pictures that you have,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And as you're sitting in your back porch on one of the chairs, that 10-foot trellis makes a difference. You don't see the rest of it?
Oh, there's lots more of it above the 10-foot fence. Is that what you're
Are you
saying?
planning to go to 20 feet to cover the whole thing?
Oh, I would have, if I could have. Yeah.
Oh, wait, one at a time. We'll get your chance.
I have a quick question.
Mr. Glenser.
Are you suggesting indirectly that your tabula tree, which I'm not a
Right.
landscaping person, will eventually, as the staff recommended, be that landscaping that shields you?
Oh,
and
it's
perhaps this
only-
I'm sorry? Perhaps this trellis is only temporary?
No.
Okay.
Oh, no. Trellis is there. No, I'd love to have it forever. Yeah. No, but it'll be covered. It'll be green. And then the tree above, and then my shrubbery. Somebody's talking to us. No.
Let's,
If I may, palm trees are tall. That will give you a solution, so you have a way out of it.
You know, I'm sorry,
Okay, if you install 4 or 5 palm trees, they're gonna cover the whole structure.
oh, it would,
Yeah.
but the problem is I already have my beautiful tree, and if I encroach anything else on my tree, you know, it's gonna,
I understand, but our position is this: we can't just because you don't like the structure, or because you have the trellis and you can't put palm trees, to decide on something like that. We have to decide on the criteria that we have and what we can decide on, whatever parameters we have. We can't legislate anything.
right.
Can I make a suggestion here?
okay,
Please.
Mr. Eisner, please give us.
You guys are neighbors,
I
okay?
know.
Let me give you my intake on my input on this. You guys are neighbors. And what I'm listening to is you telling me that you put in a complaint about his structure. He's now put in a complaint about your trellis.
Right.
Why don't you just bake some cookies, come over and try to make friends and just see what you can do to rectify this. You guys are going to live together for God knows how long together. This is not something that I want to be in between. I'm just trying to give you some insight. It's
Right.
you're going into, and you even use the words a tit for tat. You put it on his property, then now he's going to tell you take it off the property.
Right.
Why don't you just try?
Oh, we have taken it off the property.
Okay.
And it was, I talked to his surveyor.
Right.
I called him and I left a message, and he called me back in a couple of weeks. And we had already moved the trellis in about like that far into my yard. And it took 3 men to move it because it's very big, very heavy. And he said it only had to be moved 4 inches.
Can I cut you off for
So
a
we
minute?
did it over.
Let's hear from everybody else in the audience.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't want to cut you off permanently, but
Okay,
some people
here
are.
comes
We're plowing some new ground here. Mr.
Okay.
Kuskudis, you want to make?
Oh, be nice.
Yeah.
Be nice. Okay, I'm good, thank you.
Mike Kuskudis, 623 East Tarpon Avenue. I represent the neighbor at 301 Bay Street. And I will comment that your yard is beautifully landscaped, so that I will comment. But obviously, we have some issues. I'm not here to address the structure because, again, that went through Historic Preservation Board. It was granted. We got the permits. It was built. I don't know if this structure is even required to go through Historic Preservation Board. I don't know. But when I look at the pictures that were submitted, and I like to pass these pictures that were taken by the applicant. If you look at those pictures, you may see a trellis. I don't see a trellis. I see a fence. If you look at is a trellis if it's 2 foot wide, or is this one 30 foot wide across the backyard? And so if that's considered a trellis, I may want to trellis my whole backyard, okay? On all 3 sides, it's a trellis, okay? And I think it sets a slippery slope because if you grant this or acknowledge this as being a trellis, then I think everybody who doesn't like the person next door will build a 10-foot structure. And if you look at it, it's not a little piece of, wood that's, it's a massive structure. And so, in talking to my client, he said, you know what, if they say that's a trellis, I may want to put a trellis because you know what? I may not, there's some things on the back of me or the side of me that I may not want to look at. So I may want to build something 10 foot as well. So it's a slippery slope that you would be setting as a precedent if you approve this application. Again, you've done a beautiful job with your backyard, okay? And my suggestion, and I think it was acknowledged by the city and some of the members of the board, was changing up the landscaping. I know you love your tree, but maybe there's other types of landscaping that you could put to obstruct that structure. It's not a lot of these older homes back in the day had what they called carriage houses in the back. They had where the carriage or the garage was underneath, and they had quarters upstairs. And that was actually consistent with some of the older homes back in the day, and actually back in the Fruit Bowl, that they had carriage houses in the back. And I think that's why I'm not trying to revisit the Historical Society, but that may be one of the reasons that they granted this then, because there were carriage houses. There's still some carriage houses back in that neighborhood. So I just request that this board actually take into consideration the city's recommendation in denying this applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Lady, would you like to make a comment, please? Thank you for your patience.
My name's Anne-Marie Hallett. This is my mother-in-law, and I've heard a lot about this for quite a while, and she loves her house.
Could you try the microphone a little bit?
Okay. She loves her house. She loves her neighbors. She does, and has been very upset about this. So when she refers to it as a hardship, it's more that she can't sit on her patio, and it's like right there. It's a 4 foot, 6 foot. You're sitting here, you go up a little bit higher, at least it's not so in your face. But right now, it's just like a solid wall right there. Yes, it's hard from the house and stuff like that. She can get some curtains and whatever, but that won't change the fact that her little patio, which, my kids grew up sitting there, and we use it all the time, is now you got this big old ugly, this big concrete thing just overtaking this beautiful little garden. And so it's true, legal, the building, all that. But this is just a simple solution that harms nobody. And she even says it doesn't set precedent because everything's judged individually. The circumstance is just one and it's not huge, but one trellis, growing some vines on it, actually helping the neighbor, all the neighbors, not look at this big monstrosity and making it pretty. She's not trying to harm anybody, and she even has neighbors that support her. I mean, she's just trying to fix her solution, and it's not harming anyone. And as far as building, I don't know how you'd get palm trees there. I mean, it's not that big between the fence and her patio. I mean, I'm not a arborist or anything like that, but it would definitely take away from the feel of it. But a simple trellis with a little bit of green on it, it doesn't hurt.
Thank you. Questions from the board for this lady? No. Anybody else in the audience?
Mr. Chairman, while he is walking up, can I make a brief clarification? I did state something earlier with regard to the definition of offense. This board doesn't have I want to make sure I clarify because I may have misspoken. The board doesn't have the ability to define what a fence is. So the board is not here to interpret the code. Staff has already determined that this, what we keep calling a trellis, is a fence. And I want to make sure, based on some of the comments that were made, that that's clear, that this is, while we keep calling it a trellis, it is in fact a fence as defined by the city's code.
I think we've agreed to that. All right. Yes, sir.
My name is Andrew Proper. I live at 307 Bay Street. And just to go back where we're starting here with
Can I interrupt?
trellis.
Where
Yes.
is that house in relation to this particular?
I am to the south of Kathy on the same side of the street.
Thank you.
Two-story house, 1925 bungalow. I have a carriage house, well into the historic district and the rules of it. It's not a fence. I hate to disagree again, and by definition of the fence, it's off the ground. Anything could get underneath this. It doesn't go, it would not prevent anything, any street cat or animal. It's not keeping anything out. It's there for visual. And you're saying in here that you're asking that, or making the suggestion that Kathy could plant some landscaping. And I think all she's trying to do is expedite that by having this trellis to have something be able to cling to it. She can't do hedges. It says it right here, for whatever reason. And the board also made mention, they asked if this would be, or could be, a temporary structure. What would the difference in that be? If she were to say, I'd like this to be up for a 5-year variance, so I could get some landscaping to grow on it and then remove the trellis, would that make any difference to the application?
And while I do understand the back and forth that we're having with the trellis versus fence, as the city and our attorney read, we have to go by the definition that's in the city codes of what a fence is. And by the definition set forth by our codes, this does meet that definition.
How does it meet it if it's not able to keep anything out?
Can we go back to that?
The definition of a fence per the city code is: a fence is an artificially erected barrier of any material or combination of materials erected to enclose or screen areas of land.
It's not enclosing.
Screening.
You know what, I have to explain something to you. We cannot, as a board, change these definitions.
Okay.
So you can throw this argument any way you want, and we're still gonna have to come back and say, we don't determine what a fence is and what isn't. We make a determination of whether we can apply a variance or not.
Okay.
So, as much as I appreciate hearing what your definition is, and that's something that you may want to have to bring up again to the city commission, have them change our rules and laws and regulations and what you claim to be a fence, but truthfully,
So
it's
then
not.
back to, if this were considered a temporary structure, I think it was you that brought it up, or another member, Could she get
Actually,
a
I would like
variance?
to hear an answer from the city on that regard. Like, if he were to put in a trellis, if she was to install a trellis, what would the city say is not a fence? How would you define the trellis if she put that in? Would she be allowed to put in a 10-foot trellis?
Yeah, you know, we can only speak to what has been built and what's under consideration now. You know, hypothetically, you know, you can put garden trellises along your house and things like that that don't get permitted. This is a structure that would require a permit per the code enforcement department.
But if she was to remove this and put in an actual, what somebody else might consider a trellis, would that be okay? Like, if she strung wire up that was 10 foot high and let vines grow on it, would that be allowed by the city?
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of things that you can do that don't require permitting, but just based on the type of construction this is, it does require a permit, and that's what led to the code enforcement.
Okay, so she does have options that she can.
Cut off at 6 feet.
Yeah, absolutely, and you know, that's where we brought up the
6
landscaping
feet and
option
run
as well.
wires up.
No,
So,
no.
go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
Oh, please.
no, that's okay. If that trellis, as you call it, it's cut in half or 6 feet, and the vines are built up to that point, and you add another 4 feet to that, and then it builds from there, will the city have a problem with that?
Well, as long as the structure itself is 6 feet or less, it is fine. So
Okay?
what
And then
grows
it's
on
full of vines and all that, it doesn't show as trellis, it shows as grass, let's call it leaves.
Well, it wouldn't be we wouldn't regulate that. The city wouldn't. Regulate.
So in other words, if she adds another 4 feet or 6 feet to that later, and then the vines keep going up, that's gonna end up the same way. That's why the definition of trellis and fence, it's kind of contradicting. It's an oxymoron.
Also, what this gentleman mentioned about a temporary structure, if she puts something up during the day and takes it down at night, for instance, and it's 10 foot, is that allowed?
Well, I think he was speaking to a temporary variance, and there's no such animal, so this board could not grant approval of a temporary variance. There are things like, you know, umbrellas, shade structures that are not actually structures that are movable. That there are all sorts of things that you can do that don't require a permit, that aren't really structures, that would not be applicable. I mean, yeah, you can put up an umbrella that's over 10 feet tall that doesn't require a permit, as long as it's not, you know, permanently affixed.
Or a
Things like
tent
that.
or something like this?
Yeah, shade structures. Well, I don't know about a tent, but yeah.
So that wouldn't be
There
allowed?
are things that don't require permits,
They
yeah.
do make shades in a triangular shape where you can put it up.
Like those sails.
Right, like those things, is like to cover you and shield you from the sun. But that's still not what we're,
I have a question for the city. If the lady puts 2 palm trees on the 16-foot width that she has here, and she puts the trellis in between, hanging the trees, is it still a fence?
Well, you're talking about like
The design, it's an artistic expression.
I would have to see it to comment on it. If it's something that requires.
It would be in triangles, squares, whichever way you want to do it.
If I can interrupt, a lot of these hypotheticals or what ifs or could she do this or whatnot, they are just that. They're hypotheticals. It's not something that you're supposed to be considering right now. If these types of applications come to the city and they require a variance, they will come before this board. But as of right now, none of this is relevant to the application that's before you and cannot be considered when making your decision on this variance.
Agree with you again.
That's unusual.
Well, yeah,
he gives
guess-
out consultation afterwards.
And I understand that,
Wait,
but,
we're
you know,
this-
I'm the board's legal counsel, and I'm here to advise them what they can and cannot do under the law. So,
Well, you need to talk to the staff. We can't get into what you can do. That's for the staff's
Okay, at least
determination.
get your mind thinking. Gives you something to Google.
All right, well, boys and girls, let's get back to, this is not Tampa Stadium, please, Mr. Koskudis, are you finished with your presentation? Yeah, you done? All right.
And that's, you know, if I may say, this is where
Okay,
I
Jackie.
completely understand. It does look like you have a beautiful property, and I do appreciate that. And I hope that you appreciate that we are, as our legal counsel has said, we are constrained to follow the variances and the codes that the city has put forth. That's our very unglamorous role.
And if you want to blame me, I'm usually the bad guy. I'll take
Yeah.
it, if that's okay.
I agree again.
Aw. It's not applicable. Legally, the definitions, no, I'm sorry. The definitions that are set forth in the code are the only definitions that are applicable to any of the variances in the land development code. Trellis is not separately defined, and the structure that has been presented has already been determined by the city that it fits the definition of a fence. This board cannot change that. The city has already said this is a fence. We are analyzing it as a fence. There are other ways of appeal if you disagree with a definition or the way it's been interpreted. There are other portions of the code that deal with that. I suggest going to speak to the Planning and Zoning Department. But that's not for this board to make a determination.
All right, thank you very much. I've kind of kept quiet here. I got a few questions. This garage has been fully permitted, and we have no control over that. But it has not been painted. Is it going to be painted or fixed up, Mr. Kouskoudis?
It's still going through the construction process, so it's not complete at this point.
What's it gonna? Is it gonna be painted or what?
I'm sure they're gonna paint it. They're not gonna leave it cinder block, but I'm sure maybe, I don't know what the exterior, whether it's gonna be stuccoed and painted or just painted. I suspect that, I mean, he's got a nice house in front, so I suspect that whatever he does it will be coordinated with the front of the house.
I hope so. Make it look as
A nice
To make-
floral
Yeah.
mural.
We'll paint green on it.
okay. And I was out to the property, and there's just one window on the second floor of this garage. And what's going to be up there as office? Is that what it's going to be?
Yes, my client intends on using that for his home office.
Okay.
But,
and-
you know, whether, I can't comment so much on the structure because whatever it is, it's been permitted and the plans were approved. So for me to second guess.
Yeah, we're just trying to keep
I
peace in the
understand.
neighborhood.
Listen, I understand.
Would he
I
be
understand.
agreeable to putting a curtain on his window?
I'm sure he'll put a curtain in on his window.
Or paint it black, or put
Or,
aluminum
no.
foil or something like that?
Paint it a
Bad
foliage
exam-
color.
Bad joke, bad joke. I'm sorry. All right, we can do that.
Keeping it
And then
classy.
don't, okay.
Anything else that you may?
Across the street, there was like a 14-foot statue. Is that permitted? Is that?
All right, I am going to have to advise that that's
all right.
not relevant to this application, and I think we're opening a can of worms.
All right, I'm just wondering if that's, but, okay, I'm sure it is, I'm sure. I think it's fine, I just wondered if it's 14 feet in the front yard, you can't have something 10 feet in the backyard. But we do have laws. You gotta understand, the laws state that you can have a 2-story garage, for example, and a certain setback. And the laws also state you can only have a 6-foot fence in the rear yard. And you can deviate from that by appealing to this board, and if you can show with evidence that it's justified, we can do it. But I just don't see it in this case myself. You have other ways of solving the problem, which we really shouldn't be getting into. We've talked about it a lot. A lot of cities do have huge walls, and they put electrified fences. We don't do that. Our commission has said 6 feet is as high as you can go. And if you want to go higher, you'll have to do so with vegetation, which can be done.
Mr. Chairman, out of curiosity, if there was an existing fence, 4 or 6 feet, and this particular structure that she had was on her side, would that be considered a fence again? Since there is an existing
Yeah, because
fence.
it's still going to meet that definition of being a barrier. Was that the word that was on there? Barrier or obstruction?
A screen or
Screen.
an artificial erected barrier.
Okay, thank you.
You would just have two
It's a
fences.
common problem in an urban area. Can I get into my own personal house briefly?
If
No,
we've
we
closed
really
the
don't
pub-
wanna
if we've
hear it.
closed the public
Well,
hearing
we're
and
talking
this is
about
discussion, that's
discussion.
fine.
Okay.
I mean,
It
I
was
would prefer
solved
that
in
you
two
not-
portions of my house. We had a second floor, and we solved it with vegetation. There's been no problems for 30 years, and I'm sure they can do it as well. Okay, enough said.
Enough.
Could you get to the podium, please?
When we get home. Since the real issue here is the definition of a fence versus a trellis, and if she can, pursue that avenue, because then everything's fixed if we can determine by a different forum, because you're just going on what the staff is saying, not them. How do we go about doing that?
You need to consult an attorney,
Okay.
or speak with the planning and zoning department, find out what the appeals process is, if there is one. But my suggestion would be to consult with an attorney.
Okay.
All right, are we finally ready for a motion? Everybody's said what they had to say? Okay, motion,
It's a motion to deny.
there's a second?
I second.
Discussion? Hearing none, let's, ready for a vote? All right, Ms. Yothers, call the roll, please.
Ms. Turner,
Yes.
Mr. Eisner,
Yes.
Mr. Burris,
Yes.
Mr. Urbowski,
Yes.
Chairman Elliott.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you for your patience, everyone. Next up is item 9, the minutes. I have a comment on page 7. Maybe others have too. I hope I didn't say this, but it's in the minutes this way, that I was quoted as saying about the sidewalks. He further, meaning me, indicated that sidewalks should not be placed on public property. I think I said should only be placed on public property, or whatever it, if I misstated it, it's my fault, but,
I will review the
okay.
video.
As I
What just-
recall it, I think you said should not be placed on private property.
That's what I thought you said.
Should not be placed on private property, only on public property, and there was no, okay. Any other comments about the minutes?
Are you looking to amend it?
I'd
Or
like to, yes.
A motion with an amend, somebody can make a motion for
I'll make a
amended.
motion to amend it.
I'll second.
So a motion to accept the minutes as amended?
Okay, discussion? Vote, please. Let's have a roll call on this one.
Ms. Turner,
Yes, approve.
Mr. Eisner,
Yes.
Mr. Burris,
Yes.
Mr. Urbowski,
Yes.
Mr. Elliott.
Yes. Thank you. Staff comments.
No comments.
You want to say something, ma'am, but it's kind of late, but
Those pictures need to go to the secretary. She can make copies and give you
they're in
some
evidence.
back,
You
but they
can't
need to
keep-
be
I don't-
part
we
of the
gotta keep
record.
them.
To
The
put them into the
public
record, yes.
Thank you.
Board comments, I've got, Mr. Hrabowski made a comment about a recommendation we made to the city commission. We made a bunch of them about a year and a half ago. What's the status of our recommendations to the city commissioner or the city manager? Does anybody know?
My
Louis, you wouldn't.
suggestion is you contact Ms. Urwiller about that. I believe that was the process that it was supposed to go through.
Well, we made several correct comments, I believe, several suggestions. Is the board's position that we should have some result at our next meeting? Huh?
That would be nice.
At our next meeting, could we have a report on the results of our lengthy discussion about corrections to the, or revisions to the Code of Ordinances? Anything else from the board?
Yes, I made a suggestion to get, we were supposed to get training, and we never got that.
All right, next month, unless there's any report. Richard, do you have any report on that? Anybody?
I couldn't hear what the question.
The board last month made a request, or 2 months ago, that we have some procedural training, and we'd like to get a report on that.
Specific to sunshine and make sure that we're that we are clear on all the criteria that we are to look at and not look at.
Yeah, I can find out the status of that and get back with you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, my compliments to everybody for an interesting meeting, and we did well. We are adjourned at 8:55.
Do we approve the minutes?
Yes,
have-
they were already.
Yeah,
Voted on it, George.
No, we voted on the change.
And approved.
oh,
And
yeah,
approve.
As amended.
yeah, as
I
amended.
see, okay, all right.
So, we are ready to adjourn at 8:55. Thank you.